together, or
I guess we are.
John.
Bill.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
It's Saturday morning, a beautiful morning. What are you doing inside?
I'm here because you're here.
You're what?
I'm here because you're here.
Oh.
So.
I was here because you're here.
Oh.
I'm going to sit down.
That's very cosmic.
What a pleasure to see both of you. I don't know what they planned, but I was going to do question and answers. Yeah? So we'll all hang in here together?
I'm going to guess that most of the questions will be for you.
Well, the first question is, why are we here?
Why is there?
Yeah, why are we here? What is the meaning of being in Toronto?
42.
Oh, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I know nothing. I'm totally ignorant of all this. So, good morning, everybody. What a pleasure to see you. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad to be back in Toronto. I used to live in Toronto. I came from Montreal. And three people came from Montreal. The best thing about Montreal, when I got here, everybody told me, was the road to Toronto. So I many years, long before any of you were born, that's just awful to be able to say, I arrived and I lived in Toronto, and I was a young actor, and I did radio and TV and movies, and then I went to Stratford and I spent... That's so disturbing. And I spent 3 years at Stratford, and then Stratford took down a classical play to New York, and I went with it. I was in the play, and I got some good notices, and then I stayed in New York, and that was the limit of my career in Canada. I went to McGill, graduated McGill, and then 4 years in Toronto. So I've come back, obviously, a lot to film and see relatives. I got 2 sisters and some cousins and nephews here in Toronto. So I come back periodically. And what I see are these huge buildings going up on the very streets that I used to roam. I mean, when Toronto would close down on Sundays. I don't know, were you around? What do they call it, a Blue Sunday?
I lived in London for a while, but not Toronto.
London, Ontario. Yeah. No, don't cheer for me. So, I mean, that's how far back I go. So the very streets that I walked in the cold, windy, snowy, damp Toronto, there are these enormous apartment buildings. I was in a hotel. Actually, last week I was shooting film here, and I opened the drapes in my hotel room, and there were apartment buildings. It had to be 10,000 room apartments, apartments, and then a whole huge building of apartments facing, and I know they all had telescopes looking at me. You know, what are 10,000 people locked in their apartments going to do? There's a hotel over there. Let's look who's doing what to whom in the hotel. Oh my God, I think I see Shatner. You know that's what they were doing.
If I can add a moment to that, when we went out to dinner last night, and we're riding in this, SUV, and Bill's sitting in front of me with the window open, and people kept walking by and going. And at one point, this cab driver was staring at Bill, and I was behind him, I rolled down my window and rolled it back up.
Well, it's embarrassing. So, why don't we start with a question, see what's on everybody's mind, and we'll go from there. There's a microphone there. Somebody get up and ask a question. Otherwise, we don't know what to do. You know, what you've got to do is introduce yourself. I mean, you're standing there like dead quiet, not saying anything.
Very awkward, isn't it?
So help us.
So I'm Chris Ryle. I've been John's publisher at IDW for about a dozen years. And we did Star Trek books for at least a decade together. And so only in the last few years did John start doing these photo comics, this sort of new format, this new style of telling stories, where he would take stills from the old Star Trek episodes and build new sets and new backgrounds and sort of move figures around and tell entirely new stories. So he basically created an entire 4th season. So I guess my first question, if I can kick things off, is how did it feel to put words in this actor's character's mouth?
Scary. Although I did find that I knew that version of all those people from, you know, obsessively watching the episodes over and over and over and over, that it came fairly easily. I knew how Captain Kirk talked. I knew how Mr. Spock talked.
But what did you have to do with it?
I was the chief creative officer at the company, so I oversaw all the publishing, and I was John's director.
Are you saying you hired John?
I hired John.
He's the one who got me doing
So wait a minute, was
Star
it
Trek.
your idea for this whole thing?
It was my idea to hire John.
No, but well, that was a really good idea.
Very inspiring.
No, exciting idea. But when you say John, you're hired, and he says, "What am I going to do?" Who says we're going to make a big book and do that?
Well, so we started doing Star Trek comics, but I hired John, and I said, "Hey, will you draw some comics?" And John said, "I don't want to do likenesses. I don't want to try to draw William Shatner as
I'm
Captain Kirk."
terrible at likenesses.
So we did some comics where he drew.
Well, so whose idea was to take the pictures?
That was mine.
Okay, so that was your idea. But when you said, I'm going to hire, you notice they give you one little glass of water? Can I have both? John just giving me his water. Did you taste it at all? It was just, no, don't do that. My dog, you put your finger in my water? Where has that finger been? Oh, yeah. Nosy little bugger, isn't he? Who says John? You're taking it too far now, John. Your editor has just said, no, John, that won't work. You say, let's hire John Byrne, I mean, the great name, and then you say, you're not going to draw it, you were going to. Who says we're going to do pictures?
Well, so John started doing these on his own. John was drawing some Star Trek comics for us, you know, on a professional level. Us being the company IDW who published Star Trek comics.
I see.
But John started playing with the photos and telling stories just on his website, just as a fun sort of lark. And he actually posted, "These will never work. These will never get published." And I saw them and I said, "They should be published."
He's being very modest. He's being very Canadian about his. Yeah, but you're Canadian originally.
I'm not Canadian originally, no.
Get out of here.
I'm Canadian in the middle.
What does that mean?
It means I was English at first, and then I'm Canadian, and now I'm a damn Yankee.
Boo.
I didn't vote for Trump.
Did he just say... I think he was saying boo earns.
Burn, yeah, they weren't saying burn. That's funny. All right, well, we got that established. What's your question?
Okay, longtime fan from Captain Kirk.
No, you got to get right close to the mic and speak up. So
Okay.
There,
So better,
perfect.
maybe all right. So I followed your career for a long time.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
I'm talking to you.
Okay.